You have been told all your life that intelligence wins. Study hard, think carefully, speak wisely, and the world will reward you. But look closer, and you will see the lie. It is not intelligence that rises, but noise. Not depth, but spectacle. In the strange marketplace of human affairs, stupidity is the most liquid currency. It buys attention, loyalty, and even power at a price intelligence cannot match. History remembers this pattern well, bubbles that burst and left ruin in their wake, yet enriched the loudest speculators. Propaganda that bent entire nations into obedience, while silencing the quiet voices of reason. Each moment teaches the same bitter lesson. The economy of stupidity is both ancient and enduring, and those who profit from it rarely pay its cost. And yet, you feel it more urgently now. Your feeds, your headlines, your daily conversations hum with its rhythm. Stupidity is rewarded not at the edges, but at the very center of the system. Intelligence, cautious, slow, uncertain, is outbid before it can even speak. This video will take you into that paradox. Why systems reward the wrong behavior, how stupidity becomes an asset, and what it means for you to refuse its bargain. For if you do not learn how to stand apart, you will be conscripted into its trade. The mind is a labyrinth. Let's walk its shadows together. What if stupidity were not an accident of human weakness, but a system with its own invisible marketplace? What if every foolish action, every unthinking choice carried a hidden exchange rate, rewarded not with shame, but with attention, power, or profit? This is the paradox that haunts history, the economy of stupidity. It is not a fringe phenomenon, not a curiosity tucked away in dusty psychology texts. It is an engine humming at the center of human civilization. Carlo Cipolla, in his darkly playful essay entitled "The Basic Laws of Human Stupidity," argued that stupidity is underestimated precisely because it is so pervasive. A stupid act is not defined by ignorance, but by its consequence, harm inflicted on both the actor and others, with no gain to anyone. And yet, paradoxically, societies continually reward these acts, making stupidity not a cost to be minimized, but a resource to be mined. The so-called irrational becomes profitable when magnified by a crowd. Take the 17th century Dutch tulip mania, a mere flower bulb, fragile and perishable, sold for the price of a grand home. At first it seems laughable. Who would believe such absurd valuations? And yet, the laughter fades when one remembers that ordinary families mortgaged their futures for bulbs that rotted before they bloomed. Stupidity became contagious, and the more it spread, the higher the prices climbed. What began as folly hardened into a financial system, a parallel economy where reason itself was treated as an obstacle. When the collapse came, the ruin was immense. But those who had sold at the peak, often the most reckless speculators, walked away enriched. This pattern repeats like a cruel refrain. The South Sea bubble in England promised untold wealth from trade routes that scarcely existed. Investors poured fortunes into a dream woven from rumors. The French Mississippi scheme lured citizens with visions of endless riches from colonial lands few had ever seen. Each episode follows the same architecture. An absurd idea gains momentum. Logic is treated as cynicism, and soon stupidity becomes indistinguishable from optimism. Those who resisted were mocked as small-minded, while the true believers were celebrated as visionaries, until the crash exposed the lie. It would be comforting to think that modernity inoculated us against such contagions. But stupidity is an opportunist. It evolves with the systems that host it. In today's markets, bubbles form not around tulips, but around technologies and currencies. From the dot-com frenzy of the late 1990s, where websites with no business models commanded billions, to the crypto mania of our own decade, where coins named after dogs briefly held more value than established companies, stupidity once again was rewarded. The louder the hype, the greater the return. The careful skeptic once again was dismissed as a crank. The hidden market of folly operates by a few unwritten rules. First, confidence is valued higher than competence. The individual who declares impossible returns with unwavering conviction attracts far more investment than the cautious analyst who admits uncertainty. Second, contagion is stronger than calculation. People would rather belong to the frenzy than stand alone in doubt. Third, the system is rigged not against stupidity, but in its favor. Markets, after all, feed on volume, volatility, and attention, all of which stupidity generates in abundance. But this is not only a story of money. Stupidity has long been traded in politics as well. The demagogue who promises impossible victories, the leader who scapegoats instead of solving, the crowd that applauds not the truth but the spectacle, each participates in the same economy. Here, stupidity purchases belonging. It secures applause, even if it costs dignity or justice. History shows us that entire regimes can be built on this market, sustained by the currency of slogans and myths. Why then do societies continue to reward stupidity? Because stupidity is simple, and simplicity sells. Intelligence, in contrast, demands nuance, patience, and often discomfort. To listen to a complex explanation feels slow, even suspicious, in a world wired for speed. A bold falsehood has more value in the moment than a careful truth. And so, stupidity rises in price, traded like gold in the markets of attention, while intelligence languishes like a neglected currency, respected in theory but rarely spent in practice. And yet, within this bleak economy, something deeper stirs. For even as stupidity thrives, it leaves behind fractures, moments of absurdity so extreme that they provoke reflection. The tulip that cost a fortune and withered in a week. The politician who promised glory and delivered ashes. The startup that raised millions for a product that never worked. Each collapse reveals the illusion, if only briefly, and reminds us that stupidity, however profitable, cannot sustain itself forever. But do not mistake this collapse for justice. The wreckage often falls hardest on the innocent, the worker whose savings vanish, the citizen whose freedoms erode, the culture left scarred by lies. Meanwhile, those who played the game most recklessly, those who knew they were trading in stupidity, often walk away wealthier, more powerful, more entrenched. The economy of folly does not collapse into fairness. It collapses into inequality. Here lies the bitter truth. Stupidity is not merely tolerated. It is systematized, woven into the very incentives that govern our lives. The markets reward hype over honesty. Politics rewards spectacle over substance. Media rewards outrage over nuance. Intelligence, meanwhile, is asked to wait its turn, to soften its edges, to speak more slowly. And in that pause, stupidity cashes in. This chapter is not meant to mock those who fall for illusions. To do so would be another form of arrogance. Instead, it asks you to see how easily you too could be caught in the same tide. The hidden market of folly is not out there, waiting for the gullible. It is within every system you touch, every feed you scroll, every conversation you join. Each time you reward the loud over the thoughtful, the simple over the complex, the comforting over the true, you contribute to its economy. The question is not whether stupidity will continue to thrive. History has already answered that. It will. The question is whether you can recognize its currency when it is placed in your hand, and whether you have the courage to refuse the trade. If you're liking this video, please like and subscribe now. It helps the channel to grow. Thanks for your support. If the last chapter uncovered the speculative marketplace where folly could be traded for profit, this chapter turns us toward a more sinister exchange, the political economy of stupidity. Here, the stakes are no longer fortunes lost on tulips or bubbles, but the very dignity of nations and the fates of millions. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, writing in the shadow of Nazi Germany, saw something chilling that many around him could not name. He argued that stupidity was not a weakness of intelligence, but a surrender of the will to think. A stupid person, in this sense, is not simply someone who lacks knowledge, but someone who abandons reflection and allows their mind to be colonized by slogans and authorities. Against stupidity, he wrote, we have no defense. Malice we can oppose, lies we can expose. But stupidity transforms individuals into conduits for unexamined ideas, and in so doing, becomes more dangerous than deliberate evil. The 20th century proved him right. Propaganda thrives not because it persuades, but because it bypasses reason. A slogan or symbol repeated often enough becomes truth by familiarity. The swastika, the chant, the poster, these were not invitations to debate, but commands to belong. In Weimar Germany, intelligent debate was drowned out by a single hypnotic message: that all problems could be solved if the enemy, Jew, communist, or foreigner, were eliminated. This is not just a German story. Propaganda is as old as politics. Rome offered bread and circuses. Stalin rewrote photographs to erase traitors. Mao's Little Red Book became a ritual object waved in unison. Across these examples runs the same thread. Stupidity is rewarded because it is useful. Leaders do not want citizens who think. They want citizens who obey. Malice requires accomplices. Stupidity requires only silence and repetition, and so systems evolve to reward it. The mechanics are simple. A thoughtful citizen who questions is punished, mocked, or silenced. A stupid citizen who parrots slogans is rewarded with belonging, approval, and certainty. Intelligence costs you. Stupidity pays. Do you think that stupidity is often more profitable than intelligence? Where have you seen this play out in politics, work, or even daily life? Share your story in the comments. Today, propaganda has not disappeared. It has digitized. Algorithms now serve as propagandists, amplifying not what is true, but what is engaging. Conspiracies spread faster than facts. Memes displace analysis. Outrage eclipses nuance. The result is what Bonhoeffer foresaw. Masses carrying ideas they have not examined, shaping politics through unthinking repetition. The structure mirrors the bubble. Both thrive on contagion. Investors once bought tulips because others did. Citizens now adopt slogans because others chant them. Belonging becomes the highest good, reflection the greatest risk. But stupidity in politics corrodes more than reason. It corrodes truth itself. When millions repeat the same falsehood, that an election was stolen, that some hidden enemy rules the world, truth becomes a minority position. Hannah Arendt warned that the ideal subject of totalitarianism is not the convinced fanatic, but the one for whom the line between truth and falsehood no longer matters. Propaganda exhausts. It floods the mind until the effort of discerning truth feels futile. Stupidity even rewards its adherents. To abandon thought is to be freed from anxiety. Certainty is handed down in simple packages. The unthinking shouter is celebrated as loyal, while the thinker is mocked as elitist or out of touch. Soon, absurdity is not a liability, but an asset. Stupidity becomes the grammar of public life. Bonhoeffer's insight haunts us still. Stupidity is more dangerous than malice. Malice burns hot and reveals itself. Stupidity spreads like fog, dulling edges, obscuring landmarks, disorienting entire nations. Against this fog, truth struggles not because it is weak, but because it is quiet. And yet, there is always a choice. History remembers not only the masses who shouted slogans, but the few who resisted. Pamphleteers in occupied Europe, dissidents in gulags, whistleblowers who spoke when silence was safer. Their defiance proves that stupidity, though powerful, is not inevitable. If stupidity is rewarded, it is because it is easy. If wisdom is punished, it is because it is dangerous. And that is precisely why it matters. If propaganda shows how stupidity is weaponized politically, the modern workplace shows how it is institutionalized economically. Here, stupidity is not loud but numbing. The endless meetings, reports, and forms that sustain the vast bureaucracy of pointlessness. David Graeber, in his book Bullshit Jobs, argued that much of modern labor is theater. Millions go to work each day knowing their jobs are meaningless. They do not heal, build, or teach. They shuffle papers, enforce rules no one needs, or manage processes that should not exist. And society pays dearly for this charade. Graeber identified 5 main categories of bullshit jobs: flunkies, goons, duct tapers, box tickers, and taskmasters. Flunkies exist primarily to make superiors feel important, such as receptionists, administrative assistants, and door attendants. Goons are aggressive or adversarial, and exist primarily because other companies have them, like PR specialists, telemarketers, and corporate lawyers. Duct tapers are hired to fix problems that should not exist in the first place, such as IT support staff who constantly fix the same recurring technical issues caused by poor system design. Box tickers create the illusion of productive activity through paperwork, reports, or surveys that have little real-world impact, like corporate compliance officers or in-house magazine journalists. Taskmasters include those who manage people who do not need management, and who generate unnecessary work for others to justify their existence. The tragedy is not just that these jobs exist, but that workers often feel the emptiness. Graeber's interviews are filled with despair. If my job vanished tomorrow, nothing would change. To know one's labor is useless, yet pretend it matters, is a cruelty that corrodes dignity. Have you ever worked a job that felt meaningless, yet you had to act as if it mattered? How did it affect your sense of dignity or purpose? Share your experience in the comments. Your story might echo more than you realize. Why does the system reward pointlessness? Because bureaucracy sustains itself. Governments and corporations expand not for efficiency, but survival, creating roles that exist to justify other roles. Intelligence seeks clarity. Bureaucracy thrives on clutter. Stupidity is promoted because it preserves the structure. Consider the paradox. A nurse who saves lives struggles for resources. A teacher shaping minds is underpaid. Yet a middle manager who organizes endless strategy meetings earns much more. The closer one is to real value, the less he's rewarded. The further one is from it being useful, the more he's paid. Like propaganda, bureaucracy relies on repetition. Slogans become true by sheer familiarity. Pointless tasks become necessary by ritual. Weekly reports, compliance forms, quarterly reviews, each meaningless alone, yet together forming the illusion of importance. Over time, questioning them is treated as heresy. Fear sustains the cycle. Workers trapped in empty roles fear admitting the truth, for honesty risks their livelihood. Silence becomes complicity, rewarded with paychecks, titles, even prestige. Meaningful labor is dismissed as impractical. Pointless roles are cloaked in respectability. The pandemic briefly shattered the illusion. Suddenly, societies recognized essential work: nurses, teachers, delivery drivers, while many bureaucratic roles could vanish overnight with little impact. For a moment, the economy of stupidity was exposed. Appearances mattered more than substance. To spend a life in pointless labor is to trade finite years for nothing. Graeber asked, what would society look like if we eliminated bullshit jobs? What would it look like if we stopped rewarding stupidity with paychecks and prestige? The first step is recognition. To admit that much of what we call work is institutionalized folly. To defend intelligence not as cynicism, but as clarity. The bureaucracy of pointlessness shows stupidity not only as contagious or manipulative, but structural. It thrives on silence, but trembles when named. For once acknowledged, its edifice begins to crack, and through those cracks a more meaningful vision of work might yet emerge. If financial bubbles revealed stupidity as contagious and propaganda revealed stupidity as weaponized, then the digital age has revealed stupidity as monetized. In the 21st century, stupidity is not simply tolerated, it is engineered, automated, and sold at scale. The marketplace of folly now runs on servers, its profits measured not in tulip bulbs or elections won, but in clicks, engagement, and advertising dollars. The business model is simple: attention equals revenue. And nothing captures attention more reliably than outrage, spectacle, and stupidity. A headline that inflames will always travel further than one that explains. A falsehood, precisely because it is bold and dramatic, will spread faster than a careful truth. Platforms have discovered what demagogues long knew. Intelligence hesitates, stupidity sells. Consider journalism. Once conceived as a public service, many outlets now survive by stoking outrage cycles. The incentive is not accuracy, but virality. A story crafted for clicks. You won't believe what happened next. Maybe shallow, even false, but if it spreads, it succeeds. The careful investigative piece, meanwhile, may languish unseen. Here, stupidity is not an accident of the newsroom. It is the business plan. Corporations have learned the same lesson. The saga of Theranos, a healthcare technology company founded in 2003 by 19-year-old Elizabeth Holmes, offers a case study. Bold promises of revolutionary technology, repeated endlessly, drew billions in investment and years of adoration. The science was smoke and mirrors, but the spectacle was irresistible. Investors rewarded the confidence of lies over the caution of truth. Crypto markets followed the same script. Coins named after memes achieved valuations greater than companies producing real goods, because stupidity, amplified by hype, generated momentum. Intelligence once again was priced out of the market. But the most efficient merchants of stupidity are not newspapers or corporations. They are algorithms. Platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok are designed to maximize engagement. They do not care what is true. They care what is clicked, and the data is clear. Misinformation spreads further, faster, and deeper than verified fact. Outrage fuels comments, shares, and debates. Nuance fuels boredom. In such an environment, stupidity is not only rewarded, it is industrialized. Here, the logic of the bubble and the logic of propaganda converge. Like bubbles, stupidity grows through repetition and imitation. Like propaganda, it simplifies complexity into slogans. But in the digital marketplace, this process is accelerated by machine learning. The algorithm studies you, learns what enrages you, and serves you more of it. Outrage becomes infrastructure. Stupidity becomes code. The consequences are profound. Public discourse bends toward extremity, because moderation does not trend. Leaders discover that the quickest way to rise is not through reason, but through spectacle. Falsehoods, even when debunked, linger in memory because the initial burst of stupidity always travels further than the correction. The economy of stupidity is no longer episodic. It is perpetual, humming every second across billions of screens. The irony is that intelligence also created these systems. Engineers, data scientists, and designers built the machinery, but the incentives rewarded not wisdom, but engagement. The result is a civilization where the very tools of intellect are harnessed to amplify folly. Humanity has automated the spread of stupidity, turning what was once a quirk of history into the default setting of the digital age. And yet, even today, collapse looms. Just as markets crash and regimes fall, Platforms built on stupidity eventually corrode trust. Users tire of outrage. Misinformation breeds cynicism until nothing feels true. Advertisers hesitate to fund chaos. Already cracks appear. Platforms struggle to moderate disinformation. Governments threaten regulation. Users drift towards silence. But the damage runs deep. Once truth is outbid by spectacle, recovering it is slow, uncertain, and costly. The modern profit motive shows us that stupidity is not only contagious and useful, but also immensely lucrative. It is a commodity packaged and sold with precision, harvested from your own habits and impulses. And as long as stupidity pays, it will be produced, refined, and exported. The question then is not whether the economy of stupidity will collapse. It will. The question is, who will pay the price when it does? For if bubbles leave financial ruin and propaganda leaves moral scars, then the automation of stupidity leaves something harder to repair: the erosion of collective trust. If stupidity has its markets, its politics, its bureaucracies, and its profit engines, then the last question is this: how do you refuse the trade? If stupidity is rewarded, then resistance is costly. And yet, it is precisely in paying this cost that wisdom becomes possible. Escaping the economy of stupidity begins with recognition. You cannot resist what you cannot name. To see stupidity in action, in the viral headline, the pointless meeting, the demagogue's slogan, is the first act of rebellion. Stupidity thrives in invisibility, masquerading as entertainment, duty, or common sense. To pause and ask, does this matter? Is this true? Who profits from my attention? Is all ready to weaken its hold. History offers models of resistance. Michel de Montaigne, retreating to his tower, chose solitude over the noise of politics. George Orwell showed that clarity of language is a weapon against deception. Viktor Frankl, enduring the concentration camps, proved that even in horror, dignity is found in choice. Each lived in a world where stupidity was rewarded and truth punished. Each refused the bargain, preserving not only themselves, but something larger, a possibility for others to follow. Practically, resistance today means guarding attention. Outrage is engineered to keep you scrolling. Silence then becomes rebellion. To refuse to share the spectacle, to choose the slower path of reading, reflecting, questioning. These are not small acts. Every click strengthens stupidity's market. Every pause weakens it. But opting out requires more than digital discretion. It requires courage. The courage to be mocked for nuance, ignored for patience, punished for honesty. In a world where stupidity pays, intelligence will often cost you status and belonging. Yet that cost is the measure of its worth. If stupidity buys applause, intelligence buys freedom. The paradox of resistance is that it rarely looks glamorous. To the crowd, the thinker appears aloof, the skeptic cynical, the quiet voice irrelevant. But solitude is not exile when chosen. Silence is not weakness when deliberate. To refuse to shout the slogans of the day is to claim authorship of your own mind. That refusal, repeated across enough lives, becomes culture. And culture, repeated long enough, becomes strength. Resistance is also collective. No one escapes the economy of stupidity alone. The pamphleteers in occupied Europe knew this. Dissidents in gulags knew it too. Even a whispered truth survives when shared. Today, resistance may look quieter, but the principle is the same. To speak with integrity when the system rewards its opposite. To create spaces where reflection is still possible. The economy of stupidity thrives because it is easy. Escaping it demands difficulty. To read the long book, to sit with discomfort, to admit uncertainty. But difficulty is not a curse, it is the price of freedom. For wisdom, unlike stupidity, cannot be automated or mass-produced. It must be chosen, moment by moment, against the grain of the age. Wisdom rarely feels rewarding at first. It can feel isolating, heavy, even futile. To resist stupidity is to swim against a current that promises comfort if you stop thinking. Yet that weight forges independence. The thinker who carries solitude carries sovereignty. The citizen who doubts the slogan preserves truth. The worker who names pointless labor preserves dignity. The final choice is not whether stupidity will survive. It will. The choice is whether you will feed it or starve it. Whether you will join the trade or refuse the currency. Whether you will cash in your mind for comfort or carry the burden of awareness even when it costs you. To resist stupidity is not only rebellion, it is survival. And perhaps, if enough choose it, it is renewal. For while stupidity may win the day, wisdom writes the century. Every act of thought, small, quiet, unnoticed, is a seed. And if enough of us plant them, even in the soil of a foolish age, the harvest will be something no economy of stupidity can counterfeit, truth that endures. Across history, stupidity has been rewarded in ways intelligence rarely is. From tulip bulbs traded for fortunes, to propaganda shouted in stadiums, to bureaucracies built on empty rituals, to algorithms that industrialize outrage, the pattern is clear. Stupidity is not an accident of human weakness, but a system of incentives, a counterfeit currency that buys attention, belonging, even power. Intelligence, meanwhile, is punished with silence, exile, or dismissal. And yet, as this video has revealed, the story is not without hope. For stupidity thrives only when unexamined. The moment you name it, pause before it, refuse its trade, you weaken its hold. Bonhoeffer, Orwell, Montaigne, Frankl, Graeber, each in their own way showed that to resist stupidity is to defend the dignity of thought, the worth of attention, the sovereignty of the mind. The question is not whether stupidity will endure, it will. The question is whether you will invest in it, or whether you will choose the harder, costlier, but more enduring path of wisdom. For in the end, the only currency that holds value is truth, and it is minted in silence, patience, and courage. Do you think wisdom is still worth the cost in a world that rewards the opposite? Have you ever paid a personal price for choosing truth over comfort? Share your story in the comments, how you've walked that harder path. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight. Until next time, may you spend your days not in the counterfeit economy of folly, but in the wealth of clarity, dignity, and freedom that only wisdom can buy.